Hi, Davva here with the second in our series of videos on bike maintenance. This one is going to look at how you check your bike to make sure it's safe to ride. We're going to do something called the M-check. If you do spot anything during this M-check that needs fixing, you can have a look at our other videos to see if we cover that. Or if you're not too comfortable doing that right now, you can always get in touch with your local bike shop to see if they can fix it for you. Cool, so we've got our bike out of the shed or wherever, we've dusted all the cobwebs off. We still need to make sure that it's going to be safe to ride though. So what we're going to do is this M check, which basically means drawing a letter M on the frame of your bike and checking things you find along the way. So we'll start in the middle of the back wheel, we'll come up till we get to the saddle, then we'll go down until we get to the pedals, back up again to the handlebars, and then from the handlebars back down to the middle of the wheel. So we'll run through each of the things you're going to want to check on that route in separate little sections, which will be up next. So I've turned the bike around so we can look at this quick release lever on our back wheel. We want it to be closed and curving up and in towards the bike. If it's open, then the wheel is going to be loose in the frame. We should be able to open and close it with one hand, but when it's closed, we don't want it to be able to turn. If you do need to tighten or loosen it, on the other side, there's a little nut that you can turn clockwise to tighten everything up, anti-clockwise to loosen it. So after we've checked the quick release, we can check the spokes. You want to make sure they're all there, that none of them are broke or bent. And we can check they've got enough tension in them by grabbing them together in pairs and giving them a little squeeze, and you just do that all around one side and then all round the other. And on the back wheel, the ones on the side with the chain are slightly tighter than the ones on the side without. Yep, they're all good. Okay, next we're going to check the rim, which is this metal hoop around the outside of your wheel. You're going to make sure it's not worn away by giving it a rub. It should be nice and flat. Also want to have a quick look, make sure we don't see any obvious damage. Got to check both sides. And then we want to make sure it's straight. So I'm going to do that by giving the wheel a spin. I can lift it up by holding the saddle, push down on the pedals, and I'm having a look down here to see if the rim's getting closer or further away to the brake. 1 millimeter either way isn't so much, but if it's a big difference and if it's rubbing on the brakes, then our wheel's out of true. To check the back brake, we need to make sure there's rubber on the pads on this side and this side. We can get the back wheel spinning, lift it off the ground first, and then we have a look and make sure the gap between the pad and the rim is the same on this side and on this side. And also, when you pull the brake lever on, it stops the wheel and the pad is touching all of the rim and none of the tyre. And when you take the brake off, the wheel is free again. And then let's check, but it does actually stop the wheel when you put a bit of pressure on it. Once we've checked the brakes, the next thing on our letter M is the tyres. A lot easier to check them if you don't have mud guards, but it's still doable. You want to check the side of the tyre is in good shape, both sides, that it's got enough tread, and there's no bald patches from skids or whatever, and that it's got enough air in it. You can do this by giving it a good squeeze. It should be nice and solid like a rock. So we'll come up on our letter M till we get to this clamp that's clamping the seat post, and we'll also look at how the seat's attached to that post. Check it's all nice and solid by pushing it down at the front, pushing it down at the back, giving it a twist. While we're here then, let's check we haven't gone over the maximum mark. Sometimes you'll see some vertical lines that tell you that you've gone too far. This one doesn't have any, but you basically want to make sure you've got at least 4 inches or 10 centimetres of the seat post in the frame. Let's drop it back down. Okay, when you're putting your seat post back in and tightening it up, make sure your saddle is pointing straight ahead. I've got an Allen key in this side, and I don't want to tighten it super tight because that will damage the clamp and maybe damage the seat post. I just want it enough that the seat's not going to move around. So we come down from the seat post and saddle and get to the chain. We want to make sure the chain's not too worn. You'll get a little bit oily doing this, but you want to pull the chain away from the chain rings. And if you get enough of a gap there that you can see the whole of the tooth, then your chain's worn and needs replacing. So while we're at the bottom of our letter M, we can check the chain's okay. Simple way to do it is just to pedal backwards. Watch the chain, listen to it. It should go through all those gears nice and smoothly. The more complicated version is to lift the back wheel up, pedal forwards, and change through the gears. You might want to get someone to help you with that. And you just want to switch through all the gears, make sure they change nicely and the chain doesn't come off when you get to the lowest gear or the highest gear at the front and at the back. Make sure it doesn't fall off. We'll check the cranks, which are the things that the pedals are attached to. They should go around smoothly, but also they shouldn't wobble when you pull them away from the bike and push them towards the bike. Do them separately and then together to feel where the wobble might be coming from. They shouldn't wobble at all that way, and also the pedal shouldn't wobble when you pull them away from the bike and push them towards the bike. So coming back up from the chain and the pedals, we get to the handlebars. I'm going to make sure they've got plugs in the end, that they don't turn around, that the brake levers, the gears, anything else attached to them don't turn. When you're holding the front wheel steady, the handlebars don't turn. And if you've got suspension forks, you can give them a pump to make sure they're working okay. After we've checked the handlebars, we're going to want to check the bearings here that make turning nice and smooth. That's called the headset. So lift the front wheel up, give it a turn, that should be nice and easy, nice and smooth. When we put the brake on though, and rock the bike backwards and forwards, there should be no movement in it. I've got my finger here to feel for any movement, and I'm going to change the angle because sometimes there's movement in one part and not the other. So what we're looking for here is no movement at all. So the last leg of our letter M, we're going to go back down to the middle of the front wheel. First thing I come across is the tyre. I'm going to check the tread, make sure there's no bald patches, make sure there's nothing sticking out of it, make sure the side of the tyres looks fine, and obviously do both sides. To check the front brake, just like with the back, we'll make sure that the pads have enough rubber on them on both sides, that when you're spinning the wheel, the gap between the pad and the rim stays the same. Pulling the brake stops the wheel, and the pads are touching all of the rim, none of the tyre on both sides. When you let go, the brake comes off, nice and free, but when you've got the brake on, it's on enough that you can push the bike forward and it doesn't slide about. So we've got the front rim to check. Going to make sure it's nice and flat. If it's starting to curve, in the way, wearing out, so keep an eye on that. Check both sides. Again, give it a spin. Have a little look to see if it's moving towards and away from the brake pads. If it's a millimetre or less, you don't have to worry too much anymore. You might need to get the wheel trued. Check the spokes by giving them a squeeze, and that also helps you make sure they're all there, none of them are bent and none of them are broken. Of course, you do both sides. Make sure your quick release lever is nice and easy to open and close with one hand, and when it's closed you can't turn it, and then you're done.